welcome back from that quick break. You're still watching Africa's nicest, you call it finest breakfast show. It's called Daybreak Nigeria, and my name is Anthony Momodi, welcoming you back to this breakfast show. And like we told you, we're outside having the feel of the Gusape Hill, right? So fresh air everywhere, and that's what it feels like being in the greatest biggest black nation in the world, talking about Nigeria. Right now we have in this on set, I wanted to say in the studio, but we're
Not a bad
outside.
idea.
All right, we've got here right with us one man. Some people decided to start calling him the first man to declare his intention to be independent candidate of the presidential elections that will be coming up in Nigeria. He's also a security expert. He's so many things in one. He's no other person but Gaskiya in the studios right here with us.
Welcome,
Thank
sir.
you. Thank you for having me.
All right, the most interesting or trending issue right now in Nigeria is the fact that the Peace Corps of Nigeria has failed in its bid to become one of the paramilitary organizations in the country as President Muhammadu Buhari refused to assent to the bill, and it had caused a lot of uproar, and a lot of people have taken different sides. In some news, it's been said some Nigerians have lost their lives because they totally and completely hoped that with the present assent on this bill, they would have a job. And that's not the case. And it has caused a lot of issues. And we're going to discuss to see the good, the bad, and ugly of the president's decision. For you, do you think the Peace Corps of Nigeria is a scam, as said by some people, knowing fully well that it's supposed to be a branch of an organization in the U.S., talking about peace angels, but right now, they have decided to turn it the other way. The National Assembly also said when it came initially, it came like a non-governmental body organization. Then suddenly, it turned into a military or paramilitary outfit overnight, using the Nigerian X Factor to achieve that. So, is the Peace Corps organization a scam?
Well, I think that's going to be a bit difficult to say either way. I mean, there are certain things that have been done that would qualify to be called
A scam.
a scam, or
Okay.
that would qualify to look like a scam.
Does it have the qualities?
Yes, but there are also other things that
Right.
you would say does not qualify to be a scam. So first, I think we need to just get the facts straight. The first is that the Nigeria Peace Corps was established in Nigeria as an
Okay.
NGO,
Okay.
and it has a CAC registration, that the Corporate Affairs Commission registration. So it's already a registered and legal body. So in that context,
Okay.
you cannot call the organization itself a scam. But then, what the organization does, or the people who run the organization, what they do, that's where you can begin to now scrutinize. Now, and my suspicion is that those who established the Peace Corps
Okay.
did that, basing it, modeling it on the U.S. Peace Corps.
Okay.
The U.S. Peace Corps is an organization, is a government organization, it's a federal government organization that was created by federal legislation,
Okay.
Congress in the U.S. And its role really, it's like you want to do some interventions abroad in terms of peace and the rest of that. So it's really not so much of a security outfit. It is
Okay.
much more of a humanitarian and
Outfit.
aid
Outfit.
outfit, in the U.S. And then there are various variants of it across the world. In some other places, they are paramilitary, so
Okay.
they play a security role. Now, when the turn towards getting a legislation came, this was where the problem started, because NGOs have a legitimate right to exist in this country once you get registered. Okay, now, so and some of the questions that some of us worried about initially is that, well, would it really make sense for every NGO to then approach the National Assembly for a federal legislation for that NGO? So if, for example, you are an NGO that was engaging with the legislature, you really need to approach the National Assembly for a law to establish you, when already you've been established by law because you are already registered with the CAC. And then the second thing is that when you look at the title, what legislators call the long title of the bill, I mean, you say, a bill to establish a Nigerian Peace Corps to create employment and all that. I mean, why would you want to establish the Peace Corps to create employment? I mean, is that the purpose for creating a Peace Corps anywhere in the world? I mean, granted, people are going to be employed, but is that the purpose? So if you just want to create, I mean, you can easily simply just establish a social security fund for the unemployed.
Okay.
I mean, you do not need to establish an agency, that you are saying will play a security role. You are saying it's a paramilitary agency. You want it to play a security role, and then you say the reason you are establishing it is for employment. I mean, it doesn't really, it makes no sense. Now, so that said, there are also people who have then argued that Nigeria has security challenges. That the police is not doing, the police is overwhelmed, and that therefore you need additional security, apparatus. You need to firm up the security architecture in order for this to happen. There are those who have also said, well, in any case, this was also how the civil defense started before the legislation that turned it into this. And yes. So, but my worry with this is this, everywhere in the world, global jurisprudence, the policing takes care of internal security, and that's primarily the police force.
Okay.
Now, we have a very big problem as a country, and that problem is our elites, both the political, particularly the political elite, and then just following closely behind the economic elite. Now, why do I say this? We are a people that we take concepts that are meant to explain phenomena, to describe processes, and we turn them into things. So policing is a concept. Okay. So it's not the work. It's not the work that only the police does. Every agency that is established for internal security purpose is doing policing work. Okay, so that's policing. So when they come with all their statistics that is supposed to be 1 to 300, but in Nigeria is 1 to 600, one policeman to 600 people, you ask yourself, when they do that calculation, they are using the Nigerian police force, 330,000 people, but probably now about 360,000 since the new recruitment. But you are forgetting that there is the Federal Road Safety Corps. There is the vehicle inspection there is the Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps, which also has about 200,000. By the time you add all of this together, we are seriously really not under-policed. So the challenge is not about the figures and the numbers. The challenge is, how do you properly equip what you have and effectively deploy what you have? Just look, let me give you an example of wastage. You are driving around the road. You are driving on the road, on a 10-kilometer stretch of road, even within town, not even between towns, but within town, on a 10-kilometer stretch of road, you see a road safety checkpoint. Another 100 meters, you see VIO. Another 100 meters, you see regular police. Another 100 meters, you see mobile police. Then you see the SARS. And you see, on a 10-kilometer road, is that an effective way of utilizing, these internal security agencies? Then you are also on the road. You see somebody's convoy. Probably not even a public official. Somebody is driving in a very intimidating jeep. You find another Hilux behind it with about 12 policemen in the Hilux following the person, for one single person. And then you talk about being under police. I mean, you say Nigeria now has a ratio of 1 to 600, when only one person already has 60 out of the 600. It doesn't really make sense. So that's the challenge. The challenge is not creating new agencies.
Okay. The president made bold to say that the cost implications of paying this was one of the key reasons why he turned down assenting to the bill.
Yeah.
For you, looking at that issue and the fact that this Peace Corps, we know that they collected monies from these officers before they got, recruited.
Exactly.
How criminal
Is that?
that?
Okay.
And now going forward to say, pay these people when you've done.
Absolutely.
Does it
Okay, let's first take cost implications.
Okay.
Then we look at the criminal implications. Okay, so now the cost implications. Again, we're also a country where every time we have a problem, uh, we must create something new to address the problem without thinking of where the cost is going to come from, how you are going to fund it, and the rest of that. Now, let us assume that we even want to buy the argument of creating more jobs. Let us assume we want to buy the argument of the fact that we don't have enough policing officers in the country, and then you need to recruit more. It is more cost effective to recruit more people into the existing police and the existing civil defense than to create an entirely new structure with its own bureaucracy. It's going to have headquarters in Abuja. It's going to have state headquarters commands, and then you are going to have a very huge bureaucracy, And then the second thing is I've said this to some colleagues and some friends, jokingly but I'm also very serious. If I was actually the president, you know what I'm going to do? I probably would have signed that bill.
Okay.
Not because I believe in it, but to kill it. Just hold on, because once that bill is signed, the Peace Corps becomes a federal agency. It's no longer owned by whoever is commanding it right now.
Okay.
So what I'm going to do is I'll sign it. I will immediately appoint a new structure. Of course. It's now a federal government agency. I appoint a new structure and the rest of it. And then I give instruction to the Interior Minister to say, okay, go and match them with the civil defense. It's as simple as that. So now let's now talk about the criminal implications. Now, there's a lot of allegation out there. It even formed part of the case that the police brought against Peace Corps, which is collecting under false pretense. You ask people to pay. You are telling the reason. People were registering as members long before you decided you wanted to become to have a law.
Yes.
So so if as a membership NGO you're asking your members to pay membership fees, there's really no problem with that. But the false pretense is when you say, in the expectation of the fact that you are going to become, this is going to become a federal agency, you are going to become a federal officer, and then you pay so much, for training, for your uniform, and the rest of that. That's when it becomes a problem. And that's when it begins to acquire the characteristics of a scam. I will not say it's a scam because we require a court of law, the competent decision to actually make that pronouncement. Yes. But that's when it begins to acquire the characteristics of a scam, and people would feel scammed if at the end of the day this is not happening and they have paid. Some of them borrowed money in anticipation of the fact that they are going to be earning regularly salaries. And as a public servant, there are other things that also go with salary, which your allowances, everything, that goes, and the hope of a pensionable career. So these are all the things that you are dashing. And those were the things that were dangled before people to get them to actually pay. So the question is, why collect that much money? For what purpose? And what have you done with that? So this is actually really a case for the EFCC or ICPC to actually investigate. Yeah.
Okay, some people have come out to say that the main reason why the president did not send this bill is not really about money to pay or like the reason that was given, but that there's an ulterior motive as to why the president did not send this bill.
Well, let's be clear about one thing. I do not know the president's mind.
Okay.
Usually, I don't know other people's mind, and particularly, and this particular president, I don't think there is anybody who can claim that they know
His
his mind.
mind.
Yeah,
I
he
don't
told
even-
us.
Yes, I don't exactly. I don't even think that Aisha knows. So now, having said that, there may well be an ulterior motive.
Okay.
There may well be a political reason and the rest of that for that. But I think that the facts are also clear. They are also straight. I don't think that any reasonable chief executive should actually assent to that bill. Actually, the main truth is that I do not think that any reasonable legislature ought to have considered the bill. We were there. We were there during the public hearing. I mean, they invited civil society organizations working on peace and security, and many of us actually told them there and then that this was not necessary. This was not the way to reinforce security. These same people that you want to employ through this bill could actually be employed into the existing security agencies and given proper training. There was no need to create a new bureaucracy with all of the things that would require. So there is indeed really also a cost implication, and the cost implication is huge.
All right. As we wrap up, we would like to know what will be your final take if we've got the Peace Corps commander say, Mr. President, please reconsider this bill. If the president doesn't reconsider this bill, what do you think is likely to be the consequence on the part of the government, the officers that have paid money, and Nigerians?
The fate of the
The
Nigerian
fate of the Nigerian people. I think we should be more concerned about the fate of the Nigerian people. And I think that's when the question of obtaining under false pretense and all of those things really ought to come out.
So EFCC is supposed to be?
Yes, the EFCC. I mean, everybody who needs to investigate this should investigate this. Even if, for example, the bill had been assented to.
Okay.
Would it have justified collecting money from people to register, to come out to register? Yeah, but you wouldn't still have just, regardless of whether the bill was assented to or not, was that practice a justifiable practice? You know, so I mean, and we should not encourage people, to do that and get away with that.
But how realistic do you think it's going to be, the probe, the investigation, when you know the National Assembly is involved? Because they passed this bill, first of all, and so would it be that easy?
And also, in the news recently, we're hearing that the National Assembly are also trying to convince the president to assent to this bill.
No, I mean, actually, let me be very honest about one thing. I knew, even from the moment that they were doing all the rigmarole in the National Assembly, that the bill was dead on arrival. If it is the President Buhari that I know is never going to assent to that bill.
Don't you think he might compromise, knowing fully well that this is the election year?
He is not going to compromise. This is not.
You're very certain.
This is not big enough for a compromise. There are other things that are big enough for compromise. This is not big enough for a compromise.
Okay.
And so even if people were to wish that the president should take another medical leave, not even the acting president will sign it, because he's also he's a lawyer, he's somebody who understands processes and how structures should work. You don't just create a multiplicity of structure where you have not yet resolved the challenges with existing structures. I mean, we have challenges with coordination. What you have already, you are bringing in a new book. So that shouldn't be the case. So now it's going to be difficult. It's really going to be difficult. I think people have been scammed. It's going to be difficult to really compensate people, but it may be possible to actually punish people for doing that. That's if a case is established, in terms of that monies were actually collected, what was then done with the monies that were collected, how were the monies collected. If you can get a few persons, if only 10 persons actually from whom money was collected, who can, for example, testify that this was the method and this was what we were told when we were paid. I mean, you can actually build a case, because I don't think that people should get away with this kind of things. And I don't want to be misunderstood. The Nigerian Peace Corps is already a registered organization. So as an organization, it is not an illegal entity. Okay. Why it wanted more beats my imagination. Why it wanted to transform itself into a federal agency beats my imagination. And it is in that inordinate ambition that's where all the problems and the crisis then arose.
All right. Thank you very much, sir, for coming on the show this beautiful morning. At Television Nigeria, we have been speaking with a very, very smart, I would say,
Yeah.
political analyst, and of course, in the person
Of
of
Jaiye Gaskiya, and he happens to be the first Nigerian who will be stepping out as a independent candidate for the presidential position. And that's going to be a very big task, and we're wishing him all the best. And that's how we will be going to wrap on this discuss segment. We'll go for another quick break. When we come back, we'll be looking at Nigeria's national dailies. The big stories there is what we'll be dishing out for you, just that you get well informed.
Tune in and stay tuned to TVN, Television Nigeria, broadcast beyond boundaries.